What brought you to New Zealand in the first place? Don't say jazz.
I won't say jazz. It was it was more that we came. It was actually jazz. We lived in France for 25 years, and so my kids at the time, who were 3 and 5, didn't speak a lot of English, and we thought it was a fantastic opportunity to come over to New Zealand, base ourselves out here for 6 or 7 months, and then head back to Europe, put the kids in school a bit over here. So we did that, and 6 and 7 months in, everybody just loved it so much that we decided to stay. And so once the decision was taken to stay, it was then, okay, so if we're making New Zealand our homes forever, what do we do and what do we build over here? I think, you know, we're bringing something new. We're bringing a New Zealand whiskey. The volumes of New Zealand whiskey being distilled in this country are dropping the ocean at the moment compared to other markets. There's a real interest at the moment in world whiskey, in the world whiskey categories. I mean, you know, Scotch is a fantastic product, but Scotch has been around for years. I think the new world whiskey distilleries are doing things differently. They're challenging the status quo. And it's all focused on the product, it's all focused on the flavour. It's not focused on heritage. Yeah, we're building our story today, not looking in the past. So I think that's exciting as well. I think generally the consumer is, if we talk about the reputation of New Zealand on the international scale, it's incredible. And I think that will help, that will help our products like it does New Zealand wine, like it does help New Zealand beer today as well. We were very, very fortunate that we worked with a very, very good New Zealand engineering company called Farah down on the South Island, who we did kind of a design and build with them. We designed the distillery and they built it for us. The stills were the only thing we imported from overseas. They were made by Macmillan, who's a family-owned business in Scotland. They've been making stills from 1850, I think. They still hand make the stills and hand beat the stills, so yeah, we brought those over. But apart from that, everything was done on site and in the country, which was great. It's not cheap, but I mean, it will be north of 10 million by the time we start selling product in the market. So it's a pretty major investment. But the investment is not, the investment is not just building the distillery. The investment is putting whiskey into cask. So what we're trying to do here is we're trying to put into place and grow a global brand. And to do that, you need to put into place a model which is sustainable long term, which means you need sufficient stock to be able to build that brand, which means that from day one you need to put sufficient stock down into barrel. And the most expensive stuff is actually putting the stock down into barrel. It's buying the barrels, buying the raw materials, paying the salaries, etc. And the rest of the return you might get in 3 or 4 or 5 years' time. A typical distillery model, if you're lucky and you manage yourself very carefully, you might become self-sufficient in 5 or 6 years, 5 to 7 years, and you might get some sort of money back out of the distillery 10 years after, but payback is 15 to 20.
Right. Okay.
It's not a short-term project when you go into this. If you it has to be a passion project when you go into something like this, unless you're going down a different structure of having white spirits, etc. on the side as well.
Sure.
The distillery we've built here is pretty automated. That doesn't mean it's not craft, but because craft for me doesn't mean doing things differently every time. We're still making the cuts by hand, but what I wanted to do was automate the rest of the process enough that once we've fixed our profile, once we've fixed what we wanted to be able to do, we're able to replicate that faithfully every time. And it goes the same with everything. So we've got a dedicated vat room where we're able to non-chill filter, we're able to chill filter depending on what we want to do. We've got our own bottling facilities, our own maturation facilities. We've got our dry goods, finished goods storage, and we've got our cooperage as well. So we want to be we're able to control everything on site, which allows us to be masters of our own destiny.
Roughly how much is sitting there ready to ship at the moment?
So we've been distilling. We've got a distillery here which has got a pretty big capacity if we wanted to. It can run 365 days a year, 24 hours if we wanted it to. It's not, because at the moment we're just distilling enough to build the brand, and we want to make sure the model is sustainable to do that as well. We're probably laying down about 70,000-80,000 litres of pure alcohol a year at the moment, which is more than enough to sustain the brand growth we're looking for.
Yep.
The distilled site's capable of doing 250,000 if we wanted to. we're bringing out an initial core range of 3 products. So there's going to be one product which is 100% first fill bourbon. For me, that was really important to showcase the fact that that a young distillery in New Zealand was able to bring out a single malt whiskey after 3 or 4 years that was able to live on itself without being transformed by another sort of barrel type. We see a lot of younger distilleries around the world as well that can bring out finishes, sherry finishes, portwood finishes, STR casks from the start, etc. We wanted to have a product which was actually showcasing the quality of our spirit from the start. So 80% of our product goes in first fill bourbon. Pōkeno Origin is our lead product, which is 100% first fill bourbon. We've also got Pōkeno Discovery. Discovery is our whole theme for the distillery is around discovery. It's around the discovery of New Zealand, one of the last countries to be discovered, the discovery of New Zealand whiskey, which is a new category, the discovery of Pōkeno, the discovery of the whole theme. So discovery, over here, what we're doing at Pōkeno is we're not actually doing any finishing or very little finishing. So we're filling into our cask from day one. So we'll fill into sherry cask from day one, wine cask from day one, virgin cask from day one, first fill bourbon from day one. And then what we'll do is when we're ready, that gives us lots of different ingredients to put together for our different whiskies when we want them. It allows us complete control of the profile at the same time. So Discovery is a product which we put together from a high percentage of first fill bourbons, and there's also some Oloroso and PX sherry casks in there at the same time. Pōkeno Revelation is a large percentage of first fill bourbon, and then with a percentage of New Zealand red wine casks in there as well. So they're the 3 products we're putting out there at the start as our core range. There will be a range of single casks released at the same time. So we're just in the process of releasing our inaugural cask at the moment for sale. So that's the first cask ever to be bottled by the Pōkeno Distillery. That's a cask that I personally selected. There's 320 bottles available, that's all, because that's all we get out of a cask after 3.5, 4 years. That went on sale yesterday for the first time online. That's only being sold online. The first 320 bottles, I think that's almost gone already. There's a few bottles left online, but that'll be gone pretty quickly. And then there'll be a couple of other single casks as well. Quick call out to our friends at Liberty Brewing. We're doing a bit of collab with them. So they do a fantastic Prohibition Porter, which they age in some of the whiskey casks that we give them. We take those casks back afterwards and then age some whiskey in it as well. So it's a pretty cool collab which is coming out at the start as well. So yeah, and there's going to be some more fun products coming out in the future. It's not going to be incredibly different. At the end of the day, we're making whiskey. What is going to make? What we are doing, in a lot of big distilleries, it will be driven by yield. So it'll be driven by how many litres of alcohol we can get out of a ton of barley. What we're focused on is the cut. So that means that what we're looking for is only the real best part of that distillation run. So by distilling very, very slowly, what we're doing is encouraging an enormous amount of reflux in our stills. What that's doing is reflux increases the copper contact. By increasing the copper contact, so basically what we're doing is we're pushing the vapor up, but we're not pushing it up very quickly. So it's kind of falling back down. We're pushing up again, it's falling back down. All that's doing is encouraging more and more copper contact. Our spirit still is built in a certain way that the line iron is uphill as well, which makes that vapor quite hard to get up to the condensers. So again, that's encouraging more copper contact. What that does mean is that we're bringing spirit off our still at a very, very high percentage of alcohol. So we're coming onto our cut at about 76 or 77% alcohol, and we're coming off our cut at 72, which is actually higher than most distillers actually start taking their cut. So we're probably somewhere between almost a double and a triple distillation. Just from the amount of reflux we're encouraging. What that is doing is giving us a very sweet and pure spirit, which is what we're looking for at the start. We're incredibly lucky as well, and that was why we chose Pōkeno as a site as well, is that we've got a natural spring natural water source right under the plant, so actually piping that in is very, very rich in manganese, very rich in iron, which is great for distilling as well. So that's going to help. That helps the profile of the product as well. And also as well, you'll see it every time you drive over the Bombay Hills into the Jurassic Park, into the mist of Pōkeno. We're in an extremely kind of subtropical, hot and humid valley here. So as far as maturation is concerned, it's off the chart. I've never seen maturation rates like this before. We're probably evaporating between 6 and 7% a year.
Right.
which is similar to some of the Caribbean islands with the rum. So what that means is also a very, very accelerated maturation. So if we're working very, very carefully on the profile of the spirit to make that cut as small as we possibly can, then obviously coupled with the incredibly quick maturation means that, you know, at the end of the day we're getting something out which is quite special. And that's what's different. I think that's for me the big difference is the choice of raw materials. It's obviously our process which we have a control over, but it's also the climate and the climatic conditions which are you know, working enormously to help us as well.